One of the most powerful forces in our world is often misunderstood. Genetic drift has shaped every species to ever live on Earth, from this trilobite to my cat. Evolution is how species change and evolve over time, and genetic drift is what we call a mechanism of evolution, which means that it changes allele frequency within a population. An allele, by the way, is a certain form of a gene. It's basically a trait, such as having brown hair. Natural selection is also a mechanism of evolution, which is why people often consider genetic drift a part of natural selection, when in fact, the two are practically opposites. Charles Darwin coined a phrase that explains natural selection really well: survival of the fittest. In natural selection, organisms that are best adapted to their environment and the pressures in it survive long enough to reproduce, and in doing so, pass on their beneficial genes. For example, if we look at a population of beetles that lives on leaves and are different colors, we can see that some of the bugs have a much higher chance of surviving than others. If predators such as birds hunt the bugs are less likely to be eaten than black or orange bugs because they blend in more. Thus, green bugs will survive to pass on their genes, and over time, the entire bug population will likely become green. If the best way to think of natural selection is as survival of the fittest, then the best way to think of genetic drift is as survival of the luckiest. Let's say a giant flood attacks our poor bugs, and most of them die. There were only a few survivors, and most of them happened to be orange. Being orange didn't in any way help the bugs survive the flood, so it's not an adaptation. The population of bugs will go on to become orange as the surviving bugs pass their genes down. The bug population has been completely changed by something entirely random, and that is genetic drift. When a disaster such as a flood causes a dramatic decrease in population that changes allele frequency, this is a type of genetic drift known as a bottleneck effect. We can demonstrate this using marbles. If we sort the marbles into groups based on their color and design, and we say that each group represents an allele, we can see that we have 15 different alleles, all occurring at different frequencies. So we can fill the entire bottle with marbles, and then pour it out, representing the disaster, and we find that only 2 of the original 15 alleles survived. This dramatically changed the allele frequency of the population, changing the genetic makeup of it. Another type of genetic drift, the founder effect, occurs when part of the population breaks off and forms a new colony. If most of the founders of this colony possess a certain trait, for example with our bugs, if most of the founders are black, the new population will become black and reflect this trait as the founders' genes are passed down. Genetic drift affects small populations more than large ones because smaller populations have less copies of each allele and thus can change allele frequencies very easily. When an allele is possessed by 100% of the population, it is considered fixed. As a part of evolution, genetic drift continues to affect every species on Earth and remains one of the most powerful forces in biology.